Ever feel like you're constantly putting things off? You're not alone. In this video, we explore how procrastination might be a hidden sign of modern anxiety, and uncover ways to break the cycle and regain control. Did you know that 95% of people admit to procrastinating? It's more common than you think. In this video, we delve into the psychological roots of procrastination as a response to anxiety and provide strategies to overcome this common struggle. Procrastination is explored as a modern-day coping mechanism for anxiety. The video delves into the psychological reasons behind this behavior and offers insights into how to break the cycle of procrastination and reduce anxiety. Picture this: your to-do list is open. There's an email to respond to, a form to fill out, 3 tabs you've left open since yesterday. And yet, you scroll. You snack. You disappear into a quick YouTube spiral about alpacas wearing tiny hats. It's not that you're lazy. That word's been tossed around too much and with too little thought. It's not that you don't care, or that you lack ambition. It's that your nervous system is quietly shouting, "This feels like danger." Procrastination often gets misdiagnosed, by friends, family, even by you, as laziness. But here's the truth: you're not lazy, you're anxious. You're not bored, you're overwhelmed. That tiny act of, "I'll do it later," is usually the psychological equivalent of curling up into a ball under a weighted blanket made of unmet expectations. Here's something interesting. Some psychologists now call this task aversion, a fancy way of saying your brain finds certain tasks emotionally painful. And because your brain is always trying to protect you, it whispers, "Let's just avoid that." One classic study from 2007 by Dr. Piers Steele, a researcher who spent a career untangling procrastination, found that procrastination isn't really about time management at all. It's about emotional regulation. You avoid a task not because you don't understand it or because you're out of time, but because doing it triggers discomfort. That discomfort might be fear of failure, fear of being judged, or, most sneakily, fear of confronting how uncertain you feel inside. So you delay. You do something else. You fold laundry that was already clean. You rearrange your spice rack alphabetically. You check if squirrels eat avocados, just to be sure. That shift in task isn't random, it's relief. In psychology, this is called short-term mood repair. You sacrifice long-term goals for short-term emotional comfort. Because sometimes, choosing comfort over confrontation just feels easier. And yet, that comfort is so brief. Because the moment you dodge the task, anxiety doesn't vanish, it lingers. It morphs. It whispers a little louder. You feel guilty for not doing the thing. Then ashamed. Then tired. So you avoid it more. And just like that, you're on the carousel of procrastination, anxiety's favorite amusement ride. A long-standing controversy surrounds how much personal responsibility we should place on individuals for procrastination. Some researchers argue it's a willpower issue. Others say that's outdated thinking and that the real culprit is emotional dysregulation and environmental pressure. Who's right? Well, the debate continues. But you probably won't know this. In ancient Rome, the Latin root of procrastination, procrastinus, literally means for tomorrow. Even the ancients were putting things off, just without tick-tock. It's nothing new. What is new, though, is the intensity of pressure you live with. You carry a device in your pocket that delivers reminders, requests, and comparisons 24/7. You scroll through curated lives, endless productivity hacks, and bullet journal aesthetics, while your brain quietly panics about that unread email that simply says, "Can we talk?" All of this makes procrastination a kind of coping strategy, a survival tool, not a failure of character. When your brain senses too much incoming data or too many stakes on the table, it tries to shut the door and turn off the lights. That's not weakness. That's wiring. So as you drift into tonight's quiet moments, start by letting go of the label. You're not bad at doing things. You're a little scared, a little tired, a little overwhelmed. And that's okay. Recognizing the emotional root of procrastination is the first flicker of relief. Think of it like this: anxiety is the storm, and procrastination is the shelter you run to. It doesn't fix the storm. But in that moment, it feels safer than standing out in the rain. The problem is when the shelter becomes your home, and the storm never ends. That storminess leads us into something else, something chemical. You've probably blamed yourself for procrastinating, thinking it's a matter of willpower or discipline. But let's zoom in on your brain for a moment, because inside that 3-pound control center, a quiet tug-of-war is happening. On one side, dopamine, the shiny, feel-good molecule. On the other, cortisol, the stress chemical, always ready to throw a wrench in your focus. So here's how it plays out. You open your laptop to work on that report. It's due tomorrow. You feel a tight squeeze in your chest. That's cortisol knocking. It says, this is going to be hard. Your brain doesn't like that feeling, not one bit. So it starts looking for a way out. And then, ding. A notification. A meme. A snack idea. Suddenly, a hit of dopamine offers a shiny exit. You click. You laugh. You scroll. You feel better. The brain thinks, perfect. Mission accomplished. But it wasn't the mission you actually needed. This is what psychologists call the dopamine distraction loop. A 2011 study by Drive Timothy found that students procrastinated not because they were lazy, but because they were anxious about feeling incompetent. That anxiety lowered dopamine levels, while fun, distracting tasks offered quick dopamine spikes. Translation: your brain is actually rewarding your procrastination behavior, chemically. Here's a quirky detail. Rats in lab studies will repeatedly press a button for a tiny dopamine surge rather than go through a short obstacle to reach actual food. Your brain does the same, choosing micro-rewards like online videos or snacks instead of tackling the slightly tougher, but more rewarding, work task. What makes this especially sticky in our modern lives is how fast those dopamine rewards are now delivered. Tap. Swipe. Watch. Laugh. Repeat. Your brain adapts to this loop and starts preferring the low-effort, high-stimulation route. Meanwhile, cortisol waits in the background, growing louder as deadlines near. That's why you often feel the most panicked right before the thing is due. Your cortisol finally wins. But here's the kicker: cortisol isn't always bad. It's meant to help you focus in short bursts. The problem is when it's chronically elevated. And in modern life, it often is. Constant pings, multitasking, the pressure to be on 24/7, all of it builds a background hum of stress that makes even small tasks feel monumental. This creates a cycle of stress and escape. You start to associate work, not with meaning or productivity, but with discomfort. Your brain rewires to view the act of beginning a task as a threat. So instead, you scroll. You snack. You delay. You avoid. Philosophers have long debated the nature of agency, whether we are truly in control of our actions, or whether our choices are simply biochemical responses to stimuli. When it comes to procrastination, that debate feels especially real. Are you choosing to delay, or is your brain choosing for you? This is where executive function enters the scene. Think of executive function as your brain's CEO, the system responsible for planning, organizing, and starting tasks. It's mostly housed in your prefrontal cortex. But guess what? High stress shuts it down. That's right, when cortisol floods the system, your CEO clocks out early. So if you've ever stared at a blank screen for an hour, barely blinking, it's not because you're bad at writing or incapable. It's because your brain's CEO left the building, and all you've got running the show is a scared intern yelling, "Should we panic? I think we should panic." An odd but true fact: multitasking, despite being glorified for decades, actually reduces productivity and increases stress. When your brain toggles rapidly between tasks, it pumps out more cortisol. That means trying to juggle 5 tabs and 3 conversations at once not only makes you less efficient, it makes you more anxious. And guess what anxious brains do best? Delay. So what can you do with this knowledge? Well, simply understanding that your avoidance isn't irrational, it's biochemical, is a major first step. It lifts the blame off your shoulders and lets you approach yourself with a bit more curiosity and a lot more compassion. Because you can't bully your brain into focus. You can only work with it. That means fewer open tabs, fewer looming, someday, tasks, and more clear, manageable actions. It means understanding that starting is often the scariest part, not the work itself. Your brain just needs help calming down before it can begin. And this is why routines and rituals matter so much. Starting a task with a familiar ritual, lighting a candle, playing soft background music, brewing tea, signals to your brain, we're safe. We've done this before. It lowers cortisol and makes space for dopamine to rise through the satisfaction of progress, not just distraction. So no, it's not about being weak. It's about chemistry. Your brain isn't broken, it's reacting to input. It's navigating a world that constantly bombards it with pressure and temptation. And sometimes it chooses the quicker reward, not because it's the smarter choice, but because it's the easier one to survive. As your mind drifts deeper, another layer opens. What happens when the outside world turns up the heat so high that you can't even hear your own thoughts? You live in a world that never stops. You wake up to alarms, notifications, unread messages, and blinking reminders. You're told to hustle, to optimize, to make every second productive. The result? Your baseline anxiety creeps up so gradually, you barely notice until you're deep in the weeds, wondering why writing a 2-sentence email feels like climbing Everest in flip-flops. That pressure is real. And it's one of the biggest reasons procrastination has spiked in recent decades. Because when everything feels urgent, your brain can't tell what's actually important. It short-circuits. It defaults to survival mode. And survival mode doesn't prioritize taxes, resumes, or that weird corner of your fridge you keep avoiding. There's a term for this phenomenon: cognitive overload. A 2015 study from the University of California found that being bombarded with too much information in a short period of time reduces decision-making ability and impulse control. Translation: when your brain is overstimulated, it's less likely to follow through on intentions and more likely to choose avoidance. Just a quirky detail: the average person in the early 1900s was exposed to the same amount of information in a month that you now absorb in a single day. A day. Your brain is doing backflips trying to keep up. No wonder it wants a nap. This information glut doesn't just wear you down. It fuels comparison, self-doubt, and that sneaky fear of not doing enough. Scrolling through other people's productivity reels or before and after renovation videos can leave you feeling strangely frozen. Why? Because perfection is presented as normal. You're not just doing your tasks, you're supposed to do them effortlessly, with perfect lighting and lo-fi beats playing softly in the background. So instead of starting that email or organizing that drawer, your mind spins. What if it's not good enough? What if I can't finish it? What if I start and realize I don't know what I'm doing? Better to wait, right? Just a little longer. Maybe tomorrow you'll feel more motivated. Spoiler: tomorrow shows up with the same pressure, just wearing a different hoodie. Here's where modern anxiety and procrastination really dance together, in the feeling of never catching up. You're always behind on something. Work. Messages. Rest. Goals. Life. The result? You feel constantly in motion but never fully progressing. That's called time anxiety, a psychological state where the pressure of being productive warps your sense of time itself. A long-standing controversy surrounds whether technology is actually causing this anxiety, or simply revealing it. Some scholars argue that smartphones and digital life only amplify the tendencies that already existed in the human psyche. Others believe the constant connectivity is reshaping our brains in fundamental ways. The science isn't settled, but the stress is certainly real. Let's ground this in an example. You sit down to do a task. Your phone lights up. You check a message. Then a news alert. Then a reel of a raccoon washing cotton candy, again. 10 minutes later, you try to return to the task, but your brain is scrambled. That transition isn't free. It costs your attention, your energy, and your emotional focus. And it makes even the simplest task feel 10 times heavier. Now multiply that process across your day. The result isn't just procrastination, it's fragmentation. Your brain becomes so used to jumping between stimuli that it loses the muscle memory for deep, focused work. And when focused work feels foreign, it feels harder. That harder sensation fuels the cycle of anxiety-driven avoidance. You might find this surprising. In Japan, there's a growing cultural phenomenon called hikikomori, where individuals withdraw from society for months or even years, often due to extreme pressure and anxiety. While not directly the same as procrastination, it highlights a global trend. Modern life, with all its demands and pace, can drive people to retreat, sometimes deeply. Of course, you may not be hiding away for months, but you may find yourself hiding inside your head, avoiding the inbox, the project, the paperwork, the conversation. It's a quieter kind of withdrawal. One that happens behind open laptops and half-written to-do lists. So where does this leave you? Here, in this quiet moment, just know that your struggle isn't a mystery. It's the logical outcome of an environment that asks too much and offers too little time to breathe. Your brain didn't evolve for this level of noise, choice, and performance. It's not a failure to fall behind. It's biology trying to adapt. But here's the silver lining: when you recognize the pattern, you can begin to shift it. Not by doing more, but by choosing less. Smaller goals. Slower starts. Quieter mornings. Because in a world that screams, "Go faster," choosing to slow down is a radical act of self-trust. Let that be your thought tonight. You don't have to outrun the pressure. You just need to step out of its spotlight long enough to see clearly again. And as we keep unraveling this web, another thread pulls into focus, one that quietly erodes your willpower, not by drama, but by sheer volume. Let's talk about decision fatigue. You wake up and start deciding immediately: snooze or get up? Coffee now or after the shower? Which mug? What to wear? Breakfast or skip? And that's all before your day even begins. Every small decision chips away at your mental bandwidth, leaving you with a frayed attention span by noon. That dwindling reserve? It's the fuel you need to start tasks, stick with them, and finish strong. Once it's gone, procrastination slides in like a cat curling up in your lap, warm, familiar, and totally in the way. This quiet erosion is called decision fatigue. It's when your ability to make good choices wears down over time. A 2010 study by social psychologist Roy Baumeister found that willpower and decision-making draw from the same mental resource pool. The more you use it, the more depleted it becomes. That's why, after a long day of meetings, chores, and mental gymnastics, writing a single email feels like trying to pilot a space shuttle with oven mitts on. Just a quirky detail: judges in courtrooms were significantly more likely to grant parole earlier in the day than later. By afternoon, as their decision-making faculties got tired, they defaulted to no. The system didn't change, just their cognitive stamina. When you feel exhausted by choice, your brain starts to lean into autopilot. And for many of us, that autopilot leads to scrolling, snacking, or spiraling, not starting the hard thing on your list. Not because the task is actually that difficult, but because your mental start button is temporarily short-circuited. Think about this: the modern world offers endless options for everything. Want to watch a movie? Spend 20 minutes just choosing one. Want to eat healthy? Now you're juggling macros, meal plans, trending diets, and 4 tabs about omega-3s. Even rest isn't restful anymore. It comes with to-do lists: meditate, hydrate, read, stretch, gratitude journal, repeat. It's exhausting just thinking about it. The issue has sparked significant intellectual debate. Some researchers argue that decision fatigue is overstated, a mislabeling of mental boredom or stress. Others maintain it plays a central role in motivation loss and self-control. But if you've ever felt overwhelmed trying to pick a toothpaste at the store, you probably don't need a lab coat to tell you it's real. So how does all of this tie into anxiety? Well, choice overload increases the fear of making the wrong choice. That fear triggers anxiety. Anxiety saps your energy. You delay. That delay becomes procrastination. And the cycle spins on. Here's the thing, your brain is designed to conserve energy, not maximize productivity. If something feels like too much, your nervous system won't sprint, it will stall. It whispers, let's circle back later. It quietly files the task under, eventually. Meanwhile, your to-do list keeps growing, like a digital Jenga tower one notification away from collapse. And it's not just the volume of decisions, it's the emotional weight behind them. Modern decisions often come with identity questions. Choosing a career path? You're not just picking a job, you're defining your worth. Posting a picture? You're managing perception. Every choice becomes a performance. That pressure clogs your brain's gears, making simple things feel monumentally high stakes. An odd but true fact, in high-end retail stores, some staff are trained to limit the number of choices offered to customers on purpose. Why? Because too many options increase dissatisfaction and hesitation. Limiting choice leads to faster decisions and greater contentment. Maybe your to-do list could learn something from luxury handbags. So how do you soothe this decision anxiety spiral? One trick is to pre-decide. Set your clothes out the night before. Pick your meals for the week. Use templates for repetitive tasks. Even something as simple as Tuesday is laundry day can remove one more choice from your plate, freeing up your brain for the heavier stuff. Another tip? Embrace structured limitations. Create little boundaries around your choices. Only check email twice a day. Only give yourself 2 video options to watch. Choose between write 1 paragraph or clean 1 drawer, not everything. Simplicity isn't failure, it's fuel conservation. There remains considerable disagreement about whether automation, like AI planners and smart assistants, helps or hinders long-term cognitive health. Some argue it frees you up for creative tasks. Others believe it dulls the brain's ability to make decisions unaided. But regardless of the tech, the goal should be the same: create space to breathe, think, and start without fear. Because here's the bottom line: procrastination often comes from not knowing where to begin. When your mental deck is overloaded, the easiest move is none at all. But if you narrow the deck, create some structure, and give your brain fewer choices, it's more likely to pick one and move forward. Let that idea settle in tonight. Maybe you're not procrastinating because you lack drive. Maybe you've just made 1,000 tiny decisions today and your mind needs permission to rest. You're not lazy, you're overloaded. You're not disorganized, you're drowning in options. That distinction matters. As we keep floating forward, the perfectionism trap starts to shine through. That subtle, sharp voice in your head that says, if you can't do it perfectly, don't do it at all. Let's go meet it next. Perfectionism is sneaky. It wears a productivity badge but quietly sabotages your ability to begin, to persist, or to finish. It whispers, make it flawless, and then, without skipping a beat, you'll never pull that off anyway. So instead of starting, you stall. You tweak the outline again. You rename the file, for the 4th time. Or you convince yourself it's not quite the right moment, not quite the right mindset, not quite right. And that's how the anxious overachiever gets stuck. Not because you're incapable, but because the standards you've internalized are so impossibly high, the risk of failing feels too great. So the safest option becomes no action at all. This is where procrastination and anxiety hold hands under the table. Perfectionism feeds anxiety. Anxiety fuels avoidance. Avoidance leads to guilt. Guilt inflates the pressure, and around you go again. One study from 2016 in behavior research and therapy found that people with high perfectionistic tendencies often experience more chronic procrastination, particularly when tasks involve evaluation, judgment, or visibility. In other words, the more someone might see or judge your work, the more likely you are to delay it. Here's something interesting. not all perfectionism looks like spotless desks and color-coded planners. There's also covert perfectionism, the kind that shows up as self-sabotage. You say, "I'll just wing it," but secretly you're afraid you couldn't succeed even if you tried. Or you wait until the last minute so you can say, "Well, I didn't really try," and protect your ego from the sting of failing at your best. A long-standing controversy surrounds whether perfectionism is ever truly adaptive. Some researchers argue that striving for excellence is healthy when it boosts motivation. Others claim that even high-functioning perfectionism inevitably leads to burnout, fear, and paralysis. The debate continues, but most agree that when your standards stop you from starting, it's no longer helpful. You might find this surprising. In Japan, the term kodawari refers to an admirable, almost sacred attention to detail. But when that devotion crosses into obsession, it becomes shinkiai shitsu, or neurotic fixation. The difference is subtle. One is peaceful pursuit, the other is anxious desperation. Many perfectionists teeter between the two without realizing. Now imagine you're trying to write a report, or start a project, or even just pick a greeting card. You want it to be just right. You care. But as the hours pass, your brain replays a loop of all the ways it could go wrong. So you freeze. You scroll. You decide maybe tomorrow will be a better time. And then tomorrow brings the same fear, just wearing different shoes. Here's the truth: perfectionism isn't about being perfect, it's about being safe. When you aim for flawless, what you're often trying to avoid is criticism, rejection, or shame. You think, if I do this perfectly, no one can hurt me. But that's a lie perfectionism tells to keep you stuck. Here's a quirky little truth: Leonardo da Vinci took over 16 years to finish the Mona Lisa. He kept coming back, adjusting shadows, softening lines, rethinking angles. Historians now believe he was caught in cycles of creative perfectionism, delaying completion not out of laziness, but fear that it wasn't quite right. So hey, you're an artistic company. Let's also not forget, perfectionism isn't always loud. Sometimes it shows up in quiet little ways: rewriting a sentence 20 times, spending hours formatting a document, delaying a task until the mood feels exactly right. These micro-hesitations add up. You might feel busy, but nothing gets done. And your anxiety? It multiplies in the background, whispering, "See? You're behind again." So what can you do? First, call it out. Label it for what it is. When you feel yourself hesitating because something isn't perfect, say, "This is my brain trying to protect me from criticism." Not because that criticism is guaranteed, but because your brain believes it's dangerous. Second, shift the goal. Don't aim for perfection. Aim for completion. Lower the bar. Not because you don't care, but because perfection is a moving target. Done is a destination. Try this mantra: better finished than flawless. Write it on a sticky note. Say it out loud if you need to. Train your nervous system to value progress over polish. And here's a practical trick: give yourself permission to make a bad first draft. Literally title your document that way. Start with the worst version on purpose. You'll find that once the pressure drops, creativity returns. Fear steps back. Anxiety quiets down. Another tip: use timers. The Pomodoro technique, 25 minutes of focused work followed by a 5-minute break, can short-circuit the perfectionist loop. It's not about brilliance. It's about starting. Perfectionism wants to edit endlessly. A timer says, just get something down. Let's drift a little deeper with this thought. Your value is not measured by flawless output. It's measured by your presence, your effort, your tiny acts of courage, like choosing to begin even when it might not be perfect. Because the world doesn't need perfect people. It needs present ones. Imperfect, brave, trying again kind of people. People like you. And as that idea sinks in, let's keep moving gently forward, to a loop you might know all too well. The shame loop. That sticky cycle of guilt, self-talk, and delay that keeps procrastination wrapped up like a weighted blanket. So here's how it usually goes. You put something off. Just for a bit. Maybe you don't feel ready. Maybe it slipped your mind. Maybe you just needed 5 more minutes on the couch that turned into 5 hours on your phone. It happens. But then it hits. That low-grade guilt. That tug in your gut whispering, you should have done it already. You flinch. You glance at the time. You replay your inaction like a courtroom cross-examination. And you say it, maybe out loud, maybe just in your head, why am I like this? That's the start of the shame loop. You procrastinate, you feel bad, the bad feeling adds pressure, the pressure fuels more avoidance, more shame. It's like a treadmill where you never move forward, but you sure feel exhausted. In psychology, this is known as self-evaluative effect, a fancy term for the emotional weight we attach to our behavior. One study published in Personality and Individual Differences found that people with high sensitivity to guilt and shame were significantly more likely to procrastinate, not less. Why? Because every delay triggered emotional backlash, which then made starting the task feel even riskier. Here's something interesting. Shame and guilt are neurologically distinct. Guilt says, I did something wrong. Shame says, I am something wrong. And while guilt can be corrective, shame is often paralyzing. It doesn't lead to action, it leads to retreat. So if your inner monologue sounds like, I'm so bad at this, I'll never catch up, or everyone else has it together but me, you're not just procrastinating. You're emotionally punishing yourself in real time. And that punishment doesn't motivate, it immobilizes. There's ongoing debate surrounding the effectiveness of self-criticism. Some argue that harsh internal feedback is necessary for improvement. But a growing body of research shows the opposite. Self-compassion, not self-punishment, is far more effective for changing behavior over time. You're more likely to try again if you feel safe, internally. A little surprise for you, in Tibetan Buddhist psychology, there's a word, shenpa, that means the emotional hook that pulls you into reactive patterns. That moment you feel triggered, judged, or not enough. That's shenpa. Recognizing it is the first step toward loosening its grip. Noticing the hook. Saying, ah, there it is. Let's ground that in modern life. You skip a meeting or miss a deadline. You're flooded with that punch of guilt. But instead of gently regrouping, you shut down. You ghost the person. You avoid the inbox. And in the silence, your brain tells stories. They must think I'm incompetent. I've ruined everything. I'll never catch up. You don't just avoid the task, you start avoiding yourself. The version of you who wanted to succeed. Who meant well. And the longer you avoid, the harder it gets to return. Here's the kicker, procrastination is often not a lack of planning. It's a trauma response. A soft freeze. Your nervous system has decided that confronting the task feels unsafe, and so it numbs. The shame that follows is your body's signal that your internal safety system is overwhelmed. And social media? It doesn't help. It amplifies that shame loop like a megaphone. You scroll through other people's wins, clean desks, perfect routines, glowing skin under ring lights, and compare it to your current state, hunched, greasy-haired, and surrounded by 3 half-empty mugs. The algorithm rewards polish. Your reality feels messier. So you shrink a little more. Just a quirky detail, Instagram usage has been linked to higher levels of upward comparison, a psychological term for comparing yourself to people who appear more successful or attractive. And those comparisons? They're directly correlated with lower motivation and increased avoidance behaviors. Basically, the more you scroll, the more likely you are to say, why bother? So what do you do with all this? You stop trying to earn your way back into action through guilt. You don't have to deserve a fresh start. You don't have to feel perfectly ready. You just need to let the shame soften. Start by noticing the loop. Literally name it, this is the shame spiral. That naming disrupts the emotional storm. It brings an awareness, a flashlight in the fog. Then, try what psychologists call self-compassion breaks. It's as simple as saying 3 things. 1. This is a moment of struggle. 2. Struggle is part of being human. 3. May I be kind to myself right now? It might feel awkward. But kindness is like WD-40 for the soul. It loosens the rusty gears so you can move again. Not perfectly, but gently, slowly. And sometimes that's all you need. A soft re-entry. A single email reply. 1 load of laundry. 1 line written. 1 drawer cleared. Shame thrives in silence and delay. It dissolves in small action and grace. Let yourself feel the weight, but don't unpack there. You've got better places to go. Because the next step in this journey is buried deeper still, in places formed long before you ever missed a deadline or deleted a draft. We're heading into the roots now. The trauma-procrastination connection. Here's the thing about trauma, it doesn't always look like what you think it does. It's not just car crashes or combat zones or dramatic TV plotlines. Sometimes, it's subtler. Repeated emotional invalidation. High-stakes pressure in childhood. Living in environments where mistakes were met with shame or rejection. Or being praised only when you succeeded, not when you tried. Trauma isn't about the event, it's about the nervous system's response to the event. And when your nervous system learns early on that certain situations, like being evaluated, or falling short, trigger pain or fear, it builds protective behaviors. One of those is procrastination. In trauma psychology, there's something called functional freeze. It's where a person keeps going through the motions, working, attending meetings, smiling on cue, but emotionally, they've detached. That freeze mode is a response to threat. Not lions and tigers kind of threat. But internal threat. What if I fail? What if they see I'm not good enough? What if I'm not safe here? Something unexpected you'll want to know. Some trauma researchers argue that procrastination should be viewed not as a failure of character but as a learned safety behavior, one that once served a purpose. It helped you avoid rejection. It gave you space when things felt too much. It kept you afloat in situations where perfection was the only accepted currency. A 2014 study published in Frontiers in Psychology explored how adverse childhood experiences, ACEs, correlate with behavioral avoidance patterns in adulthood. The results? People with higher ACE scores were significantly more likely to exhibit chronic procrastination, especially around emotionally charged tasks. Those tasks, it turns out, often echo old dynamics, like trying to please authority figures or fearing the fallout of being seen as less than. Now for a curious tidbit, elephants raised in captivity with restrictive chains often stop trying to roam, even when the chains are removed later in life. Their nervous system remembers the limits. People do that, too. Your body can carry memories of shame, failure, or judgment long after the original thread is gone. So when you delay replying to a message, or can't open that email, or keep circling around a project, you might not just be lazy. You might be protecting an older part of yourself that's still waiting to feel safe. Philosophers have long debated the nature of free will, especially when unconscious conditioning is in play. Are we truly choosing, or are we replaying old scripts written by past pain? When it comes to procrastination, that question gets deeply personal. You may think you're choosing not to act, but sometimes, your nervous system has already decided for you. This isn't just theory, it's physical. Trauma can alter the function of the amygdala, the brain's alarm system. A sensitized amygdala can perceive neutral tasks, like starting a spreadsheet or making a phone call, as threats. It raises the alarm. Your body goes into fight, flight, or freeze. And freeze? That's the birthplace of procrastination. That doesn't mean you're broken. It means your brain is incredibly good at protecting you, even when it misfires. What once helped you survive is now holding you back. But, and here's the hopeful part, it can be rewired. Healing starts with noticing. When you feel stuck, ask, what does this task remind me of? When was the first time I felt this fear? What part of me feels unsafe right now? You don't need full answers. Just curiosity. The moment you shift from judging your avoidance to understanding it, you begin to dissolve the shame wrapped around it. Another helpful approach is inner child work. Sounds a bit woo-woo, but stay with me. The next time you catch yourself procrastinating, picture yourself at age 7. That version of you probably wasn't lazy or indifferent. They were likely scared of letting someone down. Or overwhelmed. Or just needing a nap. Speak to that part of you like you would a child. It's okay. You're not in trouble. We'll try again. That kind of internal reparenting calms the nervous system and reestablishes internal trust. Just a quirky detail, in some Native American healing traditions, emotional blockages are treated as spiritual knots, tangled parts of the self that require gentleness, not force, to untie. Procrastination, in this light, isn't a flaw. It's a signal. A message saying, there's something here that needs healing. Of course, not all procrastination stems from trauma. But when avoidance feels like a body-level resistance, when you physically can't begin, despite all logic, it's worth asking what your body's protecting you from. And sometimes, what it's protecting you from is your own voice. That voice, the critical one, the pushy one, the disappointed one, often isn't even yours. It may sound like a parent, a teacher, a former boss, an echo from a version of you who was once afraid to be seen. That voice is where we're going next. Because if procrastination is the behavior, and trauma is the context, your inner critic is the narrator. And it's time we had a little chat with them. You know the voice I'm talking about. The one that kicks in right when you're about to begin something important. It mutters, "You're going to mess this up." Or maybe it tries to sound reasonable, whispering, "You should wait until you're in a better headspace." Sometimes it shouts. Sometimes it sighs. But always, it judges. That inner critic is persistent. And exhausting. And oddly convincing. It can sound just like you, but it's not really you. It's a blend of past influences, painful moments, and internalized pressure. Over time, it becomes part of your self-talk. It worms its way into your decisions, your motivation, and yes, your procrastination. According to Dr. Kristin Neff, one of the leading researchers on self-compassion, harsh self-criticism triggers the same stress response in your body as real, external threats. Your body doesn't know the difference between someone yelling at you and you yelling at yourself. Either way, cortisol gets released. Your nervous system panics. Your executive function, the task-starting part of the brain, goes offline. So when you say things like, "I'm so behind, I'm hopeless, I'll never catch up," you're not just expressing frustration. You're activating a full-body stress response. And what do stressed brains do? Avoid. Freeze. Delay. Here's something interesting. Self-criticism and procrastination have a reciprocal relationship. A 2010 meta-analysis published in the Journal of Rational Emotive and Cognitive Behavior Therapy found that people who are more self-critical are significantly more likely to procrastinate. Why? Because they view tasks not as challenges to engage with, but as opportunities to fail. In other words, the inner critic doesn't just judge your work, it judges you. And that judgment makes starting feel like standing in front of a firing squad. So you do what your body thinks is safest. You run, you numb, you pause endlessly. Something unexpected but real, the human brain has what's called a negativity bias. We are hardwired to pay more attention to negative input than positive. It's a survival mechanism, caution keeps us alive. But when that bias goes unchecked, it feeds your inner critic. One small slip gets exaggerated. One imperfect attempt becomes total failure. And social media? Oh, it's a 5-star hotel for inner critics. Everywhere you look, someone seems to be doing more, doing it faster, and somehow looking dewy and glowing while they do it. You start thinking, why can't I get it together? And that critical voice goes from whisper to siren. A long-standing controversy surrounds the idea of using tough love on yourself. Some believe that inner discipline and high standards drive growth. But an increasing number of psychologists argue that self-criticism actually undermines resilience. It doesn't make you stronger. It makes you scared. So let's talk about flipping the script. First, name the voice. Give your inner critic a character. Maybe it's a grumpy librarian. Maybe it's a passive-aggressive coworker with a superiority complex. Whatever it is, naming it creates distance. It helps you say, that's not me, that's just my critic having a moment. Second, challenge the narrative. The next time you hear, "You're always late with everything," pause and reframe. Try, "Sometimes I struggle with deadlines when I'm overwhelmed, but I've still gotten things done before." That's not denial, it's balance. Here's something unexpectedly useful. In some cognitive therapy approaches, people are taught to write out their self-critical thoughts and respond to them as if they were defending a friend. Turns out, we're way kinder to others than to ourselves. When you flip that empathy inward, something shifts. The fear gets quieter. The pressure lifts. Another gentle tool is practicing self-distancing. Instead of saying, "I can't do this," try asking, "Why is your name feeling afraid to start this task?" Speaking about yourself in the third person creates psychological space. It reduces emotional overwhelm. It helps your brain shift from reactivity to reflection. Just a quirky detail: LeBron James, Serena Williams, and even Abraham Lincoln have been known to speak to themselves in the third person during moments of stress. It's not just quirky, it's strategic. But even with all these techniques, your inner critic won't vanish overnight. That voice is old. Familiar. Sometimes it sounds like it's trying to protect you. Don't try too hard, or you'll embarrass yourself. Don't put yourself out there, or you'll get hurt. That voice isn't always cruel. Sometimes, it's scared. And fear can be softened, not silenced. So don't fight the critic, acknowledge it. Say, "I hear you. I know you're trying to keep me safe. But I've got this now." That's how self-trust begins. One quiet override at a time. Remember, procrastination isn't just about behavior. It's about belief. The belief that starting is dangerous. That failing is fatal. That you are not enough. And your inner critic guards that belief like a dragon with a hoard of shame. But dragons can be befriended. Stories can be rewritten. And in the quiet between tasks, your true voice, the one that's patient and steady and still there, despite everything, can speak. As your body relaxes into that idea, a deeper truth reveals itself. That so much of your avoidance isn't random. It's strategic. It's your brain's way of creating the illusion of safety. Let's step gently now into that next layer, the comforting lie of avoidance. When you procrastinate, it often feels like a breather. A break. A pause before you do something hard. But more often than not, it's actually something else, your brain trying to escape discomfort, not manage it. Avoidance is seductive because it offers the illusion that time will make the task easier. It rarely does. But in the moment, it feels so good to walk away. Here's the setup: you think about the task, you feel anxious, so you turn to something less threatening. Suddenly, you're organizing your sock drawer or reading obscure trivia about how octopuses taste through their arms. They really do, by the way. Delightful and mildly horrifying. This is what psychologists call experiential avoidance. It's the process of avoiding internal experiences, like thoughts, feelings, or bodily sensations, that are unpleasant or threatening. Instead of leaning in, you lean away. Not out of laziness, but out of a deep, reflexive instinct to dodge discomfort. A 2017 study in Clinical Psychology Review found that high levels of experiential avoidance are directly linked to increased anxiety, stress, and, you guessed it, procrastination. The more you avoid discomfort, the more discomfort controls you. And the more it controls you, the harder it is to begin anything that feels uncertain. Here's something interesting: people who procrastinate often have an unusually high sensitivity to perceived threat, not just physical, but emotional. That means even thinking about being judged, failing, or struggling activates your brain's threat detector. And when that detector lights up, your system goes into self-protection mode. Avoidance becomes your version of a safety blanket. It tells you, if you don't do it now, you won't mess it up. Or, if you don't open that message, you won't have to deal with what it says. It offers temporary peace. A little buffer between you and whatever feels sharp. But here's the cruel trick: avoidance doesn't remove the threat. It amplifies it. Because while you're off watching sea otter rescue videos or trimming your split ends with nail scissors, don't act like you haven't. The task sits quietly in the background. It grows heavier. The fear around it expands. And eventually, even thinking about it makes your stomach twist. That's not relief. That's rehearsal for panic. There remains considerable disagreement about whether avoidance is ever useful in the long term. Some schools of thought argue it's a necessary survival strategy in overwhelming situations. Others believe it becomes maladaptive almost immediately. But most agree, when avoidance is chronic, it leads to more suffering, not less. Not what you'd guess, but true, avoidance actually shrinks your tolerance for discomfort over time. It rewires your brain to equate stress with danger. The more you avoid hard things, the harder things feel. You become less flexible, less resilient, more reactive. And the world starts to feel sharper, even if nothing has changed. But don't beat yourself up. Avoidance isn't a flaw. It's a coping mechanism. One that's been reinforced over time, likely because you were never taught how to stay present with discomfort in a safe, supported way. So how do you begin to shift out of it? The answer isn't force. It's exposure, gentle, deliberate exposure to discomfort. Psychologists use the term distress tolerance. It's the skill of staying in contact with something hard just long enough to realize it won't destroy you. You're not trying to eliminate fear. You're proving to your brain that fear doesn't always mean run. Try this: the next time you feel the urge to avoid a task, pause. Take one breath. Notice the discomfort in your body, the tight chest, the buzzing thoughts, the nervous twitch. And instead of avoiding it, sit with it. Just for a moment. Then, do something tiny related to the task. Open the document. Write one word. Start the timer. This isn't productivity. It's reconditioning. Just a quirky detail. Therapists sometimes refer to this technique as behavioral anchoring, the idea that you tether a scary action to a safe, small motion. Lighting a candle before you write. Sipping tea while answering emails. Your body begins to associate the action with calm, not crisis. And here's the heart of it: you don't have to be fearless to begin. You just have to stay a little longer in the discomfort than your reflex tells you to. That's where the real shift happens. Because when you see that discomfort isn't a threat, just a passing wave, you stop believing the lie of avoidance. You stop needing it to feel safe. And that opens space for action. Not frantic, pressured action. But calm, grounded, confident motion. Even if it's slow. Think of it like training a rescue dog. At first, they flinch at every noise, every movement. But over time, with gentle exposure and safe space, they stop seeing the world as dangerous. Your brain is the same. It's trying to learn that starting a task doesn't mean trauma. That making a mistake doesn't mean punishment. That doing something imperfectly doesn't mean rejection. Let that settle in tonight. That your nervous system isn't sabotaging you. It's trying to protect you, with outdated maps. You're not broken. You're learning a new route. And as you get more comfortable sitting in that tiny moment between urge and action, something else begins to shift: your focus. Your clarity. And we'll explore how that gets hijacked by sleep, screens, and overstimulation in our next gentle descent. Let's be honest, your phone is probably within arm's reach right now. Maybe it's glowing faintly. Maybe you checked it just a second ago, or maybe you're even listening to this with notifications pinging in the background. That little screen? It's your modern-day campfire and chaos engine rolled into one. Now, add sleep deprivation to the mix, and you've got a perfect recipe for anxious procrastination. Not just, I'm tired, but a bone-deep, brain-fogged, eyes burned from blue light kind of tired. It's the kind of tired where even deciding what to eat feels like solving quantum physics. And yet, somehow, instead of resting, you scroll. This is what researchers now call revenge bedtime procrastination. It's when you delay sleep, on purpose, because you feel like the day didn't give you enough time to yourself. You stay up watching videos, reading random facts about jellyfish immortality, real thing, or doom-scrolling social media. You're so desperate for control that you steal it from your own rest. And your brain pays the price. A 2019 study in Nature Human Behavior revealed that even a single night of poor sleep can significantly impair decision-making, emotional regulation, and task persistence. You don't just feel tired, you become less able to focus, plan, and start things. Add anxiety to that, and you're basically running your life like a sleep-deprived raccoon. Here's something that you want to know: your brain's prefrontal cortex, the part that helps you plan and make decisions, is one of the first areas affected by sleep loss. This is the same region responsible for executive function, which, as we've discussed, is your ability to initiate and complete tasks. So when you're underslept, it's not just that you're tired, you're literally less able to start the things you're avoiding. Just a quirky detail: during deep sleep, your brain performs a kind of neural housekeeping. It clears out waste proteins and resets emotional circuits. Skip that, and it's like trying to start your day in a cluttered room with the lights off. No wonder your anxiety surges. No wonder the to-do list feels like a monster under the bed. And speaking of lights, those glowing screens are doing you no favors. Blue light from phones and laptops suppresses melatonin, your body's sleep hormone. That means even if you want to sleep, your brain might be stuck in alert mode, convinced it's still midday in a Vegas casino. The issue has sparked significant intellectual debate. Some believe technology is neutral, it's how we use it that matters. Others argue that modern devices are engineered to hijack your attention and exploit your cognitive vulnerabilities. Either way, the outcome is the same: your attention span shrinks, your anxiety rises, and your will to engage dwindles. If you've ever noticed how you feel drained after an hour of scrolling, even though you didn't do anything, that's not your imagination. That's cognitive fatigue. Your brain burns energy every time it switches focus, even from one short video to the next. It's microfragmentation. The result? When you do try to work on something meaningful, your attention span is already chewed up. Let's put it another way: it's not that your tasks are too hard. It's that your brain is too tired to process them clearly. And instead of stepping back and resting, you keep pushing, keep checking, keep numbing. It's a loop of distraction disguised as relief. This may catch you off guard: the average person checks their phone around 96 times a day. That's once every 10 to 12 minutes. No wonder it feels hard to focus. Your attention is being chopped into pieces before it even has a chance to settle. So what can you do? Start by treating your attention like a renewable resource, and protecting it like your peace. This means sleep hygiene matters more than you think. Keep your bedtime sacred. Dim lights an hour before. Use blue light filters. Stop punishing yourself with 2 a.m. productivity guilt. You're not winning the hustle game by losing your rest. You're just losing sleep. And as for screens? Try creating focus zones. Carve out 30-minute windows without checking your phone. No news. No reels. No emails. Just a single task. You'll feel withdrawal at first. That's normal. But after a few days, something weird happens. Your brain starts to settle. Your nervous system calms down. You begin to reclaim your internal pace. Some people swear by digital sunsets, turning off screens 30 to 60 minutes before bed and doing something analog. A book. Journaling. Just breathing. The simplicity slows your thoughts. It creates space. And in that space, you start to remember what you're capable of. Another trick? Start your day without your phone. Even 15 minutes of quiet before the scroll can make a difference. It lets your mind boot up on your terms, not the world's. And most of all, be gentle with yourself. This isn't about blaming tech or blaming you. It's about recognizing the environment your brain is trying to survive in. You weren't built for 24/7 alerts and algorithmic overstimulation. You were built for rhythm, rest, depth, stillness. So if you're struggling to start something and all you want to do is lie down and scroll, maybe listen to that urge to rest. But rest well. Not through noise, but through quiet. Not through numbing, but through nurturing. Because once your nervous system is rested, your focus comes back. And when your focus returns, so does your motivation. Not a fireworks explosion kind of motivation, but the quiet, steady kind, the kind that helps you finally open the file, send the email, start the task. Let's drift into that space a little longer, and see how procrastination doesn't just affect your work. It follows you into conversations, connections, and closeness. That's right. Let's explore what happens when anxiety-driven avoidance shows up in your relationships. You know the feeling. There's a text you meant to reply to 2 days ago. Or maybe it's a conversation you keep putting off. A conflict you tiptoe around. An apology you half-drafted in your head but never quite sent. And in the quiet in-between, something uncomfortable grows: guilt, anxiety, maybe even a touch of resentment toward yourself. This is relational procrastination. It's a real thing. And it can quietly erode the strongest of bonds. At its core, this kind of procrastination isn't about laziness. It's about fear. The fear of being misunderstood, rejected, or saying the wrong thing. So instead of risking discomfort, you delay. You convince yourself, I'll message them when I'm in a better mood, or I need to think more before I respond. But as more time passes, the stakes rise. And soon, it feels too awkward to reach out at all. Here's something interesting. A study published in the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships found that avoidance behaviors in communication are often linked to heightened anxiety and a low tolerance for emotional ambiguity. That means people who fear conflict, rejection, or vulnerability are more likely to procrastinate conversations, especially the hard ones. This delay isn't just external, it becomes emotional. You start dodging intimacy. You put off discussing needs. You avoid eye contact during tense moments. You keep it surface level, not because you don't care, but because deep down, you care too much. And your nervous system is trying to protect you from perceived emotional danger. An odd but true fact: in attachment theory, people with an anxious avoidant attachment style often experience a double bind. They crave closeness but fear it will lead to pain. So they delay vulnerability, not because they don't feel, but because they feel too much. And what about romantic relationships? Well, procrastination shows up there too. You delay bringing up something that's been bothering you. You avoid making decisions about the future. You forget to book the date night or sidestep that big, we need to talk moment. It's not indifference, it's a protection mechanism in disguise. A long-standing controversy surrounds whether procrastination in relationships is simply bad communication, or if it reflects deeper issues, like fear of abandonment or emotional fatigue. Some argue it's situational. Others say it's a personality trait that reflects your core emotional wiring. Either way, its impact is real. And then there's friendship. You leave a message unread. You take too long to respond. You cancel plans because you're too tired, when really you're just overwhelmed. But the guilt that follows doesn't lead you to connect, it pushes you further away. The shame loop returns, but now with a side of social anxiety. Just a quirky detail: in South Korea, there's a term called injeon, which refers to the mysterious, delicate thread that ties people together. It can be stretched thin by silence, but never fully severed by time. That idea, that connection can persist through imperfection, might be the antidote to your relational procrastination. So, what can you do when procrastination starts to harm the relationships you actually care about? Start small. Send the "Hey, sorry for the delay" message. Don't wait for the perfect wording, just reach out. A simple acknowledgement is often all someone needs to feel seen again. Practice emotional exposure the same way you practice task exposure. That means letting someone see your awkward, uncertain self. Not the polished version. Not the rehearsed speech. Just you. Showing up, imperfectly but genuinely. Try this. If you're avoiding a tough conversation, write it out first. Not to send. Just to feel your feelings on paper. This helps your brain process what's really going on. Then, when you're ready, speak from that space, not from guilt, but from clarity. And don't forget to ask yourself why you're avoiding. Is it fear of hurting someone? Fear of not being enough? Of losing the connection? Naming the fear can shrink its grip. Another tip: apologize without over-explaining. People don't need your full emotional autopsy. Just be real. Say, I got overwhelmed. I didn't mean to disappear. I care about you. That's more powerful than any essay. And remember, connection doesn't have to be grand. A meme. A voice note. A quick thinking of you. These small gestures stitch the thread back together. Don't underestimate their weight. There remains considerable disagreement about whether people should push through social avoidance or wait until they feel emotionally ready. Some therapists advocate for gentleness and patience. Others argue that too much delay reinforces the habit of retreat. The sweet spot? Begin with low-stakes reconnection. No big talks. No pressure. Just presence. Let this idea comfort you tonight. You're not bad at relationships. You're just carrying anxiety that makes communication feel heavy. But even small moments of effort, sentences instead of silence, kindness instead of delay, can shift everything. Because relationships, like tasks, don't need to be perfect. They just need to be tended to. Gently. Consistently. Even when it's awkward. Even when you're unsure. So as you settle deeper into this moment, remember that your avoidance isn't indifference, it's a sign you care. And that care deserves a voice. Not someday. But soon. Now, let's follow that thread into the professional world, where avoidance takes on new disguises: imposter syndrome, performance anxiety, and the fear of being found out. Time to explore how procrastination plays out in the workplace. So you're staring at the blinking cursor. The document's open. The deadline is tomorrow. You've read the brief, made the coffee, reorganized your desktop twice, and still, nothing. You're not lazy. You're not lost. You're just quietly wrestling with the belief that you don't really belong here, that any second now, someone's going to tap you on the shoulder and say, "Excuse me, this must be a mistake." Welcome to imposter syndrome. Where success feels like luck, praise feels like pressure, and every task becomes a minefield of what-ifs. What if I mess this up? What if they realize I'm not that good? What if I prove them wrong for believing in me? And in this anxiety soup, procrastination thrives. Because the longer you put off doing the task, the longer you postpone the moment of possible failure. It's not that you don't want to succeed, it's that you're scared of being seen trying and still not measuring up. A 2016 study in personality and individual differences found a strong correlation between imposter feelings and task delay, especially in high-achieving individuals. Translation: the more accomplished you are, the more likely you are to doubt it, and ironically, to delay the very tasks that validate your success. Here's something interesting: people with imposter syndrome often overwork and underperform at the same time. How? They spend hours agonizing, researching, perfecting, but delay starting. So when the deadline hits, they sprint, crash land the project, and then tell themselves, "See? That was terrible. You barely pulled it off." It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You believe you're faking it, so you avoid starting. You rush through the work. Then, the rushed result reinforces the belief that you're not really capable. Around and around. A weird little bonus: Maya Angelou once admitted she felt like a fraud, even after publishing multiple award-winning books. "I have written 11 books," she said, "but each time I think, oh, they're going to find me out now." So yes, even legends feel like they're winging it. And the workplace? Oh, it doesn't always help. Modern professional culture often rewards output over well-being. There's pressure to appear confident, organized, endlessly productive. So you fake it. You show up polished, while inside you're paddling furiously against anxiety. This emotional labor leads to what's called workplace paralysis. It's when the pressure to perform shuts down your actual ability to perform. You're not burned out yet, you're frozen. Your mind spins with scenarios, your to-do list feels like a threat, and even simple tasks carry emotional weight. There remains considerable disagreement about whether workplace procrastination stems from personal traits or toxic environments. Some researchers argue that chronic avoidance is an internal issue, fear of failure, low self-efficacy. Others point to external factors like unclear expectations, poor management, or constant surveillance. The truth is likely both. You might find this surprising. One of the strongest predictors of procrastination at work isn't laziness or disorganization, it's low psychological safety. When you don't feel safe to make mistakes or ask questions, your brain plays it safe by not engaging fully. Avoidance becomes armor. And in remote work settings, this becomes even trickier. Without the social cues of an office, colleagues checking in, subtle reminders, informal accountability, tasks can slip into the background. You delay. You say, "I'll do it right after lunch." Then it's 7 p.m., and the shame spiral begins again. So what do you do when the pressure is high and your motivation's in hiding? First, redefine success. Instead of aiming for flawless work, aim for consistent effort. Give yourself permission to be average sometimes. Not forever. Just in moments where perfect is stopping you from doing anything at all. Second, build low-friction entry points. Don't start with "finish the report." Start with "open the file and type the first sentence." The smaller the entry point, the less resistance. Your brain is more likely to cooperate when the stakes feel manageable. Third, find a gentle accountability system. Not a boss breathing down your neck, but a peer, a friend, or even a virtual co-working session. Just knowing someone else is working beside you, digitally or otherwise, can ease the mental weight. And finally, speak kindly to yourself. This one's not fluffy. It's functional. Research in self and identity shows that self-compassion improves motivation after failure far more than self-criticism. When you say, "I struggled today, but I'll try again tomorrow," your brain hears safety. And safe brains try again. Just a quirky detail, some productivity experts suggest writing your tasks as "would like to" instead of "have to." So instead of "I have to finish this presentation," you write, "I'd like to make progress on this today." That subtle shift lowers pressure and invites action without panic. And if the fear of being seen is part of your procrastination, consider this: you don't have to be the best to belong. You just have to be present. Show up. Try. Be willing to learn in public. That's more valuable than pretending you never stumble. So tonight, if your mind is spiraling about unread emails, missed deadlines, or things you should have done, breathe. You're not falling behind. You're just navigating a noisy, high-pressure system with a sensitive nervous system. And every time you try again, even in small ways, you're rewriting that system. Now, let's move into something a little surprising. A twist. Because not all procrastination is harmful. There's a version of it, intentional, mindful, and even helpful. You heard that right. Let's talk about mindful procrastination. You've probably heard the saying, "Don't put off until tomorrow what you can do today." But what if, sometimes putting it off is exactly what your nervous system needs? Mindful procrastination is the art of delaying with purpose. Not to avoid, not to escape, but to allow ideas to settle, emotions to regulate, and your mind to work in the background while you wait for the right conditions to move forward. Something you'll want to know: the brain continues solving problems even when you're not actively thinking about them. It's called diffuse thinking, a mode your brain enters when you're relaxed or distracted, like in the shower, or on a walk, or while folding laundry. That sudden insight you get at 2 a.m.? Or that aha moment during a random drive? That's your brain working behind the scenes. So, when you mindfully pause on a task, not out of panic or shame, but because you're creating space for deeper processing, you're actually engaging a powerful cognitive strategy. A 2010 study in the Journal of Research in Personality found that individuals who practiced what they called active procrastination, deliberately delaying tasks while maintaining control, often achieved better outcomes than those who rushed or panicked. These people didn't stall because they feared the task, they delayed because they trusted the process. Just a quirky detail: Leonardo da Vinci was famous for leaving projects unfinished for months or years, only to return with fresh insight and astonishing precision. He once said, "Art is never finished, only abandoned." Which, if you've ever closed a half-written email and decided to revisit it later when I'm calm, probably resonates. The key difference between anxious procrastination and mindful delay is awareness. Anxious procrastination says, "I can't handle this." Mindful procrastination says, "This needs to breathe." It's about stepping back without stepping away. Now, does that mean it's always wise to delay? Of course not. But not every task needs immediate action. Some benefit from time, reflection, or simply waiting until your nervous system feels regulated enough to begin. A long-standing controversy surrounds whether procrastination can ever be framed as a strength. Many argue it's inherently dysfunctional. Others believe that when channeled with purpose, delay can become a form of creative incubation. The truth likely lies in your intention. So how can you tell the difference? Ask yourself these 3 questions. Am I avoiding this because I'm afraid? Would a short pause actually help me refocus or rethink? Do I have a plan to return to this? If your answer to number 1 is yes, that's probably anxious procrastination. If your answer to number 2 and number 3 is yes, you may be practicing mindful delay. One way to use this technique intentionally is called the intentional pause. Before starting something overwhelming, pause for a set amount of time, 10 minutes, an hour, even a day. Use that pause to do something soothing or physically grounding. Then return with a renewed sense of calm. This technique respects your emotional state without abandoning the task altogether. Here's the tricky part: mindful procrastination requires trust. You have to trust that you'll come back to the task. That your future self will be ready. And for people used to shame-based cycles, trust in your future self can be hard. But it's a skill that grows with practice. Try this: keep a gentle task log. Each time you delay something, write it down, not to judge, but to track. Then, when you return and complete it, add a note: waited until X, got it done when I felt ready. Over time, this builds a visible record that you do come back. You're not a flake. You're someone who's learning how to listen to your mental rhythms. Did you know this? In some Zen Buddhist teachings, the idea of non-doing is sacred. Not as avoidance, but as presence. To wait without anxiety. To pause with purpose. It's not about giving up, it's about releasing the tight grip of control and trusting the moment to unfold. Now, this isn't an excuse to delay everything. Some things just need to be done, sleepy or not. But for the creative tasks, the emotional ones, the complex ones, giving them space is a kind of respect. Like letting bread rise or letting paint dry. Rushing ruins the process. Delay, with intention, makes room for depth. And here's the most human part of all: sometimes, what you thought was procrastination was really just your body saying, "Not yet." Your mind saying, "We're still gathering." Your spirit saying, "Let me rest so I can rise." So tonight, if there's something unfinished hovering over you, maybe it's not a failure. Maybe it's a seed still germinating. Maybe it's not time yet. And if it is time, you'll know. You'll feel that tiny shift. The breath before the start. The quiet click of readiness. That's where we'll go next. To the moment where readiness meets reality. Where action begins, not from panic or pressure, but from presence. Let's ease into how to gently break the cycle of anxious procrastination, with care, not force. You've made it this far, which means something inside you is already shifting. You're not just passively listening. you're witnessing yourself. And that witnessing? That's powerful. It's the first step in loosening the grip of patterns that feel immovable. But here's the truth: breaking the cycle doesn't mean never procrastinating again. It means learning to recognize it faster. Interrupt it earlier. Return to yourself more kindly. It means trading force for curiosity, and urgency for awareness. So how do you begin? Start with your nervous system. That's always the first terrain. If your body thinks it's in danger, your brain will resist every task that feels vulnerable. So instead of asking, "What do I need to do right now?" ask, "How can I feel safe enough to start?" This could mean dimming the lights, playing instrumental music, putting your feet flat on the floor and breathing slowly through your nose. These small sensory shifts signal to your brain, "We're okay. It's safe to focus." Then, make the task smaller and smaller until it feels doable. Not exciting, not impressive, just doable. Write one sentence. Answer one email. Clear one corner of your desk. You're not chasing productivity. You're restoring movement. Here's a fresh insight. Psychologist B.J. Fogg, founder of Stanford's Behavior Design Lab, teaches that habits grow best when they're tiny. Not big, flashy, or ambitious, just small enough that they slide under your brain's resistance. Want to write? Start with opening your notebook. Want to stretch? Put the mat on the floor. That's enough to trigger momentum. A long-standing controversy surrounds the best way to build motivation. Should you wait for inspiration, or act your way into it? Most current research sides with the second. Action begets motivation, not the other way around. You don't have to feel ready. You just have to begin. And once you begin, celebrate it. Not with a party. Just with a breath. A small inner nod. I did that. I came back to myself today. Just a quirky detail. The Japanese philosophy of Kaizen encourages continuous improvement through tiny steps. Not reinvention. Not perfection. Just quiet forward motion. It's used in business, but it works beautifully in healing, too. The belief is simple: small, steady shifts lead to transformation. Now let's talk about your language. Your self-talk. The words you use when no one else is listening. Instead of "I have to do this," try "I choose to give this a try." Instead of "I'll never get caught up," try "I'm doing the next thing I can." Instead of "I'm terrible at this," try "I'm learning how to do this under pressure." These phrases aren't toxic positivity. They're bridges. Language that connects your overwhelmed mind back to your capable body. Another helpful technique? Implementation intentions. These are specific if-then plans. Like, if I feel stuck, then I'll stand up and stretch for 30 seconds. Or if I catch myself scrolling, then I'll open my to-do list and do just one thing. These little contracts bypass decision fatigue and give your brain a clear, simple map. And remember, rest is not the enemy of progress. It's the foundation. The more you nurture your body, hydration, sleep, movement, the more your executive function returns. Think of rest not as something you earn after doing the work, but something that enables the work. Here's something delightful: taking short, non-goal walks, no destination, no phone, no purpose, has been shown to significantly improve creative thinking and reduce task-related anxiety. So go ahead, wander. Meander. You're not wasting time. You're building internal space. Here's the deeper truth: you're not just learning how to do tasks. You're learning how to stay with yourself in discomfort. That's emotional regulation. That's nervous system literacy. That's the real work. So break the cycle slowly. Forgive the delay. Begin again gently. Say, even if I only do one small thing today, that's enough. Say, even if I stumble, I'm still allowed to try. Say, even if it's not perfect, it still counts. And now, as you float into the final quiet of this evening, let's close with a soft wind down. Not a rush to the end, but a slow return to calm. You're here. Still. Breathing a little softer now. Maybe your body feels just a little lighter. Or maybe there's still some weight, but it doesn't feel quite as sharp. Wherever you are in your journey with procrastination, know this: you are not broken. You're adapting. Protecting. Surviving in a world that asks for too much, too fast, and too often without pause. You've uncovered truths tonight, about your mind, your habits, your emotions. You've traced procrastination to its roots, not in laziness, but in fear. In fatigue. In the quiet ache to feel safe enough to try again. And now? You don't need to change everything overnight. You don't need to hustle your healing. You just need to stay present. Let your breath be your starting point. Let stillness remind you that effort can be gentle. You don't need to earn rest. You are allowed to slow down. To soften. To move at the speed of peace. So as you drift into sleep, or into quiet reflection, leave behind the shame. Let it melt into the covers. Replace it with something smaller, something kinder. A whisper of trust. Tell yourself, tomorrow, I'll try one small thing. Just one. And that will be enough. Before you settle in, feel free to like the video if it brought you a little peace, and if you'd like to join us again, we'd love to have you back. Subscribe when you're ready. No pressure, just rest. Share something if you feel like it. Let's slowly drift into tonight's quiet moments together.